Breaking tonight, tensions may be near a boiling point between the United States and Saudi Arabia, just 2 days ahead of President Obama's trip to the kingdom, as Democrats and Republicans alike push for the full release of the 28 pages of the 9/11 Commission report that remain classified. Charlie Rose of CBS News just asked President Obama what is in these pages tonight.
Have you read it?
You know, I have a sense of what's in there. Jim Clapper, our Director of National Intelligence, has been going through to make sure that whatever it is that is released is not going to compromise some major national security interest of the United States.
Joining us now, Mark Thiessen, Fox News contributor, former chief speechwriter to President George W. Bush, and Dr. Sebastian Gorka. He is the Major General Horner, Distinguished Chair of Military Theory at the Marine Corps University, and the author of the brand new book, Defeating Jihad, The Winnable War. Great to see you both. Dr. Gorka, let me start with you on this. What is your take? Because in some circles it's very controversial about whether these 28 pages should be declassified. Is it a good idea or no?
Look, when you've had, Megyn, both Republican and Democrat congressmen say that these pages should be released, and congressmen who've actually read those pages, I think the argument of the administration is lost. We need to know what was the exact involvement. There are lots of stories floating around of Saudi embassy officials assisting some of the hijackers, at least 2 of them located in San Diego. We need to know that. There needs to be justice for the victims of 9/11, and I think after 15 years, now could be the time to declassify these 28 pages.
Mark, if what's in the pages suggests that the Saudi government or top officials in some way were behind 9/11 or had a substantial role in 9/11, don't we need to know that, or is that something it doesn't serve us to know?
Well, I think it does serve us to know the details of it to the extent that it doesn't compromise sources and methods or hurt our national security. 2 administrations, both the Bush and Obama administration, decided that they would hurt our national security. I haven't seen the 28 pages, and neither has Dr. Gorka, so we don't know what's in them exactly. But we already know that Saudi Arabia was turning a blind eye to terror and was even, in some ways, complicit in terror. I mean, Saudi Arabia was one of 3 countries on the face of the earth that recognized the Taliban regime in Afghanistan that was harboring al-Qaeda. In 2003, Vice President Cheney gave a speech, and I'll read you what he said. In Saudi Arabia, fundraisers and facilitators were providing money and logistical support to al-Qaeda. So these are things that we already know. We don't know all the details. But President Bush, what he did was he made an ultimatum to the world. He said, you are either with us or you're with the terrorists. And he gave a choice to countries like Saudi Arabia, and they choose to be with us, and they're now a very important counterterrorism partner.
So
but before 9/11, they were helping. Absolutely.
So I mean, what is the takeaway on that, Dr. Gorka? That they did help. They participated in the 9/11 attacks, but they came over to the lightness after 9/11, and now what are we supposed to do?
Look, the reality is Saudi Arabia, like Pakistan, is a fundamentally schizophrenic nation. We know that they cut a deal with the jihadists in 1979 after the siege of Mecca. We know that elements of the regime have been supporting or funding jihadi organizations around the world.
But we need them still. We need the Saudis.
Right, but that doesn't mean as a government they're all bad guys. They're just conflicted and they're schizophrenic. And they need to get their house in order and decide whether they can clean internally their house and make sure they're on our side against the jihadists. They've been kind of half pregnant for the last 15 years,
So
Megyn.
it's like dealing with Sybil. You remember Sybil, the movie where she had all the personalities inside of her? So like the bad and then the good, and we don't know which one we're getting, but we've decided that we need to sort of pretend that it's all good because they can provide some benefit to us. But Mark, I ask you, you know, are we gaining something at this point by keeping the 28 pages secret when Bob Graham, you know, of the 9/11 Commission is saying, release the pages, that this classification stuff is nonsense, that the American public has a right to know who was behind the attack, and there's no reason to continue protecting them?
Well, I think that's probably true. Again, as long as it doesn't compromise sources and methods, and Bob Graham has seen the document, so he knows better than either of us as to what's in it and whether it would compromise sources and methods. But there are other people in senior positions who disagree. I can't make a judgment on that based on having not seen the document. But we do know that the 9/11 Commission found that the Saudi government, as an institution, and senior officials did not participate in the 9/11 attacks.
But that was worded very carefully.
Yeah, I know.
Very
But the
carefully.
question,
You can drive a truck
so
to
the
the holes in
question
that
is,
statement.
were there people, were there princes, were there people, you have a Saudi king who has dozens of wives and dozens of sons and dozens of grandchildren. Were there members of the Saudi royal family? Were there people who were officials who did, not as a matter of government policy, but as a matter of ideology, help the 9/11 attacks? We do need to know that, absolutely.
And so, Dr. Gorg, what's your take on where we should stand with Saudi Arabia? Because now some are pushing this bill that would allow the 9/11 family members to sue the Saudis, and the Saudis are making all sorts of threats against us if we do that they're going to pull all of their assets out of here, that they're going to hurt the United States financially. If you're looking for the number here, it's a substantial sum. I don't have it in front of me, but what do you make of their reaction?
$750 billion.
There you go.
They are threatening to sell $750 billion of U.S. assets. That's just a smokescreen. Never going to happen. That regime cannot survive without us, militarily and economically. And I'd like to emphasize what you said previously, Megyn. The wording of the 9/11 Commission report is incredibly precise. The Saudi government as an institution and high-ranking members of the government were not responsible for 9/11. That is very, very telling wording.
I mean, as a lawyer, it's like...
As a lawyer, you know it.
That's on the nose. They could have done better. We get it. All right, guys, good discussion. Thank you both.
Thank you.